the Colorado Education Initiative, Keith Harmon from Eagle County Public Health have agreed to help coordinate the group. We will staff the work of this group out of a combination of Colorado Department of Public Health, Colorado Department of Education, and Governor's Office. We're also joined, in addition to the co-chairs, by Amy Baca Olair, the president of the Colorado Education Association, of course, a teacher and a parent herself. All of the members of the group are dedicating their time and talents to investing in our kids and making sure that our kids' education is not another victim of this pandemic, with the goal of successful and safe return to in-person education as much as possible across the state, as uninterrupted as possible during a pandemic for next semester. So the work is really around the prep work for January. The first meeting was very productive. The entire group is going to get together at least once a week. There was interest today in discussion around subgroups, working groups in different areas that will break out and roll up their sleeves and get to work. We just want the state and the resources of the governor's office, and I know the commissioner and the Colorado Department of Education feel the same way, to really be seen as an asset to help districts return safely to in-person education. This is a diverse group of folks: parents, teachers, superintendents, school board members, health officials, all bring their own wealth of experience and opinions. But we know that for many kids and frankly also for many teachers, the classroom is one of the safest places. And we want to make sure that we can do all we can do in that controlled environment to really make sure that we don't have an additional semester as chaotic as this one is. I think in a pandemic, people understand there are needs for, and there will be cohort quarantines and even in some cases, site closures for a week or two. But we would love to provide more predictability to teachers, parents, families, as well as make sure that kids get the education they need across our state. And we have had so many educators and principals just go above and beyond in serving their students in different ways, in person, then online, in person again, and balancing remote learning from working at home, always a challenge for many families are facing. And while so many folks have gone above and beyond, there's just a lot of uncertainty out there. And I don't think we're not saying, and we're not setting up somehow this group can end all the uncertainty. It won't, but we feel that we can absolutely work together to reduce some of that. Last week, we announced $15 million for schools and school districts to make safety improvements, outdoor classrooms, HVAC improvements, filtration, PPE, plexiglass, all those types of things. We want to continue to do more. And so does CDE, Colorado Department of Education, along with the governor's office and the Department of Public Health, to support our schools as they transition back to in-person learning for January. This is important for our economy today, for our students tomorrow, for our future. And this past semester has not looked like any other semester, but I know that by working together, we can provide a greater degree of certainty and more successful in-classroom safe instruction for more parents, teachers, students in the spring semester of 2021. I'm happy to turn it over to our co-chairs to say a few words. Dr. Heath Harmon with Eagle County Public Health Department, and then Rebecca Holmes, president of the Colorado Education Initiative, and then Amy Baca Olair from the Education Association. Go ahead, Heath.
Hello, everybody. Hoping that you can hear and see me now. Just a quick correction. Not a physician or a doctor, just a public health director, but nevertheless, take my job seriously and look forward to working with this group. One thing that we talked about, at least in this very first introductory meeting, is really just that common agreement. Schools are vital. They're super important, I think, not only to all of our communities, but they're super important to our kids, to our teachers, and they have a tremendous amount of social benefits. They also represent, honestly, a safe place for youth that might have a tougher home environment. And so it was great to actually participate with so many folks that share a common vision in terms of how is it that we can actually bring our schools back online, do it safely, and share a lot of the lessons that we've learned already across the many different school districts and communities throughout our county. So I'm honored to be part of the group. And so with that, I'll turn that over to Rebecca.
Hi, all. Rebecca Holmes, President and CEO of CEI, the Colorado Education Initiative. One of the reasons CEI was founded about 13 years ago was to lend extra capacity to the state. Never imagined this would be the year that it has been in K-12 education, but happy to be helpful and happy to join the governor and Amy and Heath in this effort. Heath alluded to this. We have 178 school districts in this state. And when you add private schools, that means we've got dozens of different approaches that we've learned from the last semester. And I'm thrilled that this will be an effort to put some of those important findings together, combining the data and information that's emerging from public health with some of the new and promising practices we're seeing in K-12 to figure out how do we get as many students and teachers back as safely as we can in the second semester, and potentially learning things we'll need to use into the next school year as well. This includes everything from a particular focus on our youngest learners who we know really struggle and aren't developmentally in an appropriate age range for ongoing online learning, all the way up to middle school and high school, where we know students are struggling with school attachment and social emotional gaps as well from isolation, as well as some really important work I think we'll be able to do to look at particular populations of kids, special education learners and English language learners, as well as students who've experienced ongoing and unusual amounts of transience or disruption in their learning because of the economic impacts as well. So thrilled to lend CEI's support to this and work with this group.
Thank you. And I think Amy Baca is having some technical difficulties entering presenter mode. She might be with us shortly as a presenter, and she will say a few words. But in the meantime, why don't we open it up for questions? And then when Amy is able to successfully enter presentation mode, we welcome her to say a few words. Do I have a staff person who can instruct press on how to ask questions? Katie Eastman, go ahead.
Hi, Katie with 9 News. Governor Polis, I wanted to ask, you said schools are a relatively safe place. What do you mean by that? How does that line up with the outbreak numbers we're seeing? And while we know kids might be at a lower risk, they can still take the virus home to people who are more vulnerable. So how do you talk about that?
Well, look, during the pandemic, every action we take entails some risk. We go and buy groceries. We go buy clothing at a store. Your job, the people work at, right? You might work near others. So it's really a question of how can people be empowered to make the right choices to minimize their risks. And for many families, a safe public school environment in the classroom or private school, if they go there, is one of the safest places their kids can be. It can also be a very safe place for educators in terms of being able to work in an environment where both the students and the teachers have masks, where there are strong protocols around how the cohorts are run to prevent outbreaks. So we really need to thread this needle. As a society, we value education. It's our future. It's your kids' future. Every family in Colorado cares about the success of their kids. And we just have to figure out how to make sure that schools can be as safe as they can for in-classroom education during a pandemic. Now, does that mean that for some families, particularly maybe a kid being raised by their grandparents in their 70s who are very high risk for the virus and are retired, they might support online education and might not want any exposure, and they might not be going to the grocery store. They might be ordering delivery. They might be staying in when the risk is high, and they might want their grandchild to stay in. That's an individual decision people make. But for many families, I dare say most families, schools are often one of the safest places that kids can be during the day. Let me turn it over to Heath, who talks a lot about the public health benefit of schools as well.
Yeah, I would agree with those comments. I mean, we all have had an opportunity to learn sort of how to implement protocols that are going to be successful. And so our schools, they offer layers of these prevention protocols. It's not only one prevention method, but it's actually a series of those prevention methods. And where we see schools that are implementing those layers and actually have strict adherence to those layers, the benefits are there. We do see those school environments being very safe. There are a number of other environments outside of the schools that actually are not nearly as safe, where they don't have the same either adherence to the protocols or they don't have any oversight over those protocols. So I think one thing I would want to just acknowledge is that no matter what school district you're working from, our teachers and our staff and our leadership in school districts have done a tremendous job thinking about what are all the precautionary measures that we know are important for COVID. How do we implement them into a school environment, and how do we do this successfully? And so we're continued to learn in terms of what some of those best practices are, where some schools are really demonstrating maybe improvements, and how we can share some of those lessons across the many different school districts. But I think realistically, our data, at least in Eagle County, would suggest that is very true. Our school environment is actually a safer environment than many of the other environments in our community where there are no protocols being implemented, and or there's no enforcement of those protocols.
Hi, this is Melanie Asmar with Chalkbeat. One of the main barriers that's being cited by districts has been the quarantine rules, and I know CDPHE just put out new guidelines today. I'm wondering if you can address, what exactly is new in those guidelines, and why it seems they're sort of a loosening, and why is that safe at this time?
Governor, you're on mute still.
Oh, they had to unmute me. On the specifics, we will have a follow-up conversation with somebody from CDPHE. We're happy to have either Dr. Herlihy or Jill Ryan answer specifics. I'll just say at a high level, we got a lot of input from county health officials, from doctors, from our state scientists, as well as the input from school districts and teachers, and really feel confident that these protocols, which are nearly identical to the protocols that worked in August and September, are a good way to maximize in-person instruction and keep staff and students safe. On the specifics of them, we'll link you up on a subsequent conversation with one of our health officials.
Hello, Governor. Jesús Carrasquel from Noticias Univisión Colorado.
Sí.
Gobernador, algunos estudios revelan que los niños pueden ser asintomáticos o portadores del virus. ¿Cómo cree usted que el equipo que formó para reabrir las escuelas garanticen que esto no se propague el virus en las familias de los estudiantes y luego en la comunidad?
Sí. Muchas veces las escuelas son el lugar más seguro para los estudiantes y para las maestras también. Las escuelas son un parte muy importante de la futura. Es importante preparar los niños para tener ganos en sus futuros. Y por esta razón, es una prioridad en nuestra administración para regresar el máximo número de estudiantes a la escuela en una situación más segura que posible. Nada durante la pandemia es totalmente seguro, pero tenemos la oportunidad en las escuelas para mejorar la seguridad de profesores y también estudiantes.
Hi, Governor. Marshall Zellinger with 9 News. By now, you know that Denver Mayor Michael Hancock has flown out of DIA today to spend Thanksgiving with his wife and daughter out of state. You were both at a news conference last week encouraging people to alter their Thanksgiving plans and caution about travel. Two things. One, did he ever tell you he was leaving the state while also making those statements to the public? And second, how can you share the stage with him to impart COVID-19 safety and precautions after his travel now?
So no, I've not had any conversations with the mayor about his Thanksgiving plans, and was not aware of them. Our own plans, and I'm very close to my extended family. We usually have Thanksgiving with cousins and my parents, and 15 or 20 people, sometimes 2 Thanksgivings because we have a fun family. This year, we are not doing that. We are just having the 4 of us and our little dog, Gia. I'll be cooking all day tomorrow for the 4 of us. I have the feeling there'll be a lot of leftovers because we couldn't find a small turkey. And my partner Marlon's vegan, so we got a 14-pound turkey. There's only 3 of us who eat turkey, well, 4 including Gia. She's only 10 pounds though. and of course the kids. So I'll be cooking all day tomorrow, and look forward to having a small family get together with our 4 members of our family and our dog Gia. And that's because we care deeply about our extended family. And I haven't seen my parents in 9 months, and that's very hard. And we've only seen Marlon's dad and sister once. We did a socially distant visit over summer with them in Berthoud. That's very, very hard. But not only do I want to set the example as governor, of course, but frankly, this is what we do because we love our family. And my parents are 76. I want them to be here for 20 more years. My late grandmother of blessed memory, June Polis, lived to age 96. They have good genes, but good genes don't help when you're 76 with coronavirus, which sends 1 in 4 76-year-olds to the hospital. Some make it, some don't, and we want to avoid that fate for my parents and my aunts and my uncles. Oh, Amy Baca Olair has joined us. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties, Amy. We said great things about educators and teachers and the initial work of the task force. Do you just want to just say a few words about your hopes and our opportunity to work together for safe in-person instruction?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Governor. And yes, as the president of the CEA representing 39,000 educators across the state, we are thrilled for this opportunity to be a part of this work group to discuss the real challenges ahead and the real opportunities ahead for us to get to a place to safely reopen our schools to in-person learning. Of course, education has been happening all across our state in all of our schools in various ways this fall. We've learned a lot of lessons, and we have a lot of that information we can put to use so that we can all work collectively and collaboratively to get to that place that we all know where we want to be, which is in safe in-person learning. There is nowhere that our educators want to be more than with their students. There is nowhere that our students want to be more. Well, maybe they might want to be playing video games and stuff, but we know that learning and socializing is so important to our students. And so we are thankful for this opportunity to work together so that we can learn from this past spring, this summer, and this fall, so that we can move forward collectively on safely opening our schools with as few disruptions as possible to in-person learning. So very thankful for this opportunity, Governor, and happy to do this work with you all.
Thank you, and we'll continue with the questions. And sorry, Amy, for the technical difficulties. I'm glad you're able to resolve them. Next question.
Hi, this is Taylor Summers for NBC News Radio, and this is for anyone here. Even if students can return to in-person learning uninterrupted starting in January, the damage here in a lot of ways to their education has been done over the last 9 months. So looking ahead here to a post-COVID-19 world, what can be done to reform our education system here and make up for some of these shortfalls that our students are going to be facing over the coming months and even years?
First, let me just start a preface by saying that's beyond the scope of this working group. There's a lot of broader discussions with many stakeholders. I want Rebecca to talk about that. She's been leading some of the thought process around that. But just to be clear, this group will really focus in a targeted way in safe return to in-person instruction. Rebecca?
Sure. Outside of this working group, CEI started setting that table for conversations about the 21-22 school year and beyond. We're starting to work with some school districts across Colorado who are thinking seriously about breaking that challenge up. You've got to start thinking a little differently about different grade cohorts. Obviously, K through 2, we know that the significant concern is about reading gaps and about math instruction. Students who haven't yet learned to read couldn't tackle that by themselves if they were in a remote environment, and it's really tough to teach reading to a young child through remote means. And so really starting to think about some best practices that exist already in schools about how they use summer and how they really focus on capturing those reading and math gaps in the early years. As you get into later grade spans, folks are thinking creatively about summer and concurrent enrollment. alternative approaches to fifth-year programs for students who would have graduated in the class of 2020, 2021. And then particularly thinking about school attachment. So students who would have been in sixth grade or ninth grade this year, or any of those transition years, maybe haven't set foot in their school and haven't had exposure to their peers, haven't met a teacher in person. So I think when we break that up into particular grade bands, we'll start to see really important and impressive solutions arise as we think about the 21-22 school year and the tail of this disruption.
Hi, this is Erin Prater with the Colorado Springs and Denver Gazette. I know this question has been brought up before yesterday as well, but how do you keep schools open with so many staff quarantined? And maybe this is addressed today by this new guidance that I've not read, but is there talk of allowing staff who aren't licensed perhaps? What are some of the ideas that are being discussed? And then also, why not focus, and maybe you are, on developing online instruction and really beefing that up? That could benefit all students regardless of whether they're healthy and they have a healthy family or whether they have a medical condition or live with those who do. Thank you.
Let's see who wants to comment on that. Maybe Rebecca, Amy, Heath. Amy, go ahead. Amy first. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure, I'm happy to comment on that. Thank you. I believe this is one of the things that this work group is going to tackle, and it's one of the reasons why the governor is pulling us together. We need to address those questions and think creatively and be innovative about how we address some of those barriers and challenges. The substitute shortage is an extreme challenge that many of our districts are experiencing. And so we need to talk together collectively, collaboratively about how we're addressing that substitute shortage and how we can overcome that staffing shortage when we have to follow that quarantine guidance. That is, we're happy to follow the quarantine guidance because it's keeping our students and our staff safe. But we do need to talk about those implementation challenges and how we overcome them. And that, to me, is one of the great opportunities that this work group has, is for us to think creatively, to be innovative of how we approach that type of a challenge.
I'd say, too, on the second part of that question, obviously tackling substitutes and staff capacity is critical. On online learning, we are absolutely seeing leapfrog practices, and that work is getting better and better. The state and CEI are working with at least 3 or 4 technical assistance providers who are improving schools' approaches to virtual instruction. I would say, though, as a trained educator myself, there's just no replacement for most kids on most things to in-person learning. And so I'm glad that's the primary focus of this group.
Yeah, maybe I can offer one other thought here. From my perspective, I think the single most important thing that we can do that helps support teachers and some of the staffing capacity issues is, as a community, as a state, we need to lower the transmission of COVID in our own respective communities. Whether we have kids or not, it doesn't matter. All of our behaviors, all of our exposures, what we do actually has a ripple effect in our community. So the single most important thing we all can do to actually help support our youth, our teachers, our school districts is actually lowering transmission in the community.
Thank you. Next question.
Sorry, this is Gabrielle Franklin from Fox 31. Have 2 different questions here, one for the governor and then one for our leaders in education. Governor, just to follow up on a question that was asked earlier, are you disappointed in Mayor Hancock's decision to leave the state via air travel? And then for our education leaders, when it comes to the updated guidance, is there a certain sense of hope when it comes to looking at some of the guidance referring to siblings and just close contact? We know kids like to mingle a lot and get together. Is there a certain sense that this will really help bring down the number of outbreaks that we see here in Colorado related to schools?
So I've not discussed personal Thanksgiving plans with the mayor or others. I was not aware of his plans. Look, I just want Coloradans to make the best informed decision they have with the data they have. We have 1 in 41 people are currently contagious with coronavirus. That means if you have a Thanksgiving party of 10, there's about a 1 in 4 chance that somebody could be bringing it into your home. At the very least, of course, there's plenty of Coloradans who being self-quarantined larger get-togethers, and if they have, that reduces the risk. In addition, making sure that nobody has any symptoms whatsoever is absolutely critical. Nobody with the sniffles or a headache or a fever should even consider going to a family get-together. And then beyond that, people should know that about 40% of people with coronavirus are asymptomatic but contagious. And unfortunately, it's higher for younger groups. So if you're thinking about the nephews, the nieces, teens, and 20s, it's as high as 60% that could be asymptomatic, but it could easily be contagious for grandma or grandpa or aunt or uncle. And in the types of gatherings that are traditionally associated with Thanksgiving, close physical proximity, no mass around the table, transmission is very likely. So with 10 people, 1 in 4 chance somebody brings it in, it's very likely to go from 1 person to 3 people or 5 people in that kind of environment. Okay, on the second question, Keith or Rebecca, do you want to talk about those protocols a little bit?
And Gabrielle, I don't know if we still have a chance, but would you be able to repeat the second part of that question?
Yes, I was asking about the guidance when it comes to close contacts. I saw that, the state updated it in that regard, and then talking about siblings. Just asking, how you guys think that would play a big role in reduction when it comes to case transmission.
Yeah, I think it can play a pretty significant role. I think the one thing that I would offer up is that if anybody in the household right now is suffering symptoms that might be considered COVID, realistically at that point in time, it's really important for the rest of the household members to start considering sort of what their quarantine measures should be. So realistically, within our school environment, what we've seen a few times is where one household member has been sick, has been scheduled to get testing, and as they're waiting for the test results, the kids or somebody else may either going to the school environment or work environment. And so within a couple of days, those individuals might turn positive as well, and then we have that exposure potential in school. So I think all things start probably sort of within what's in our own control. So I would just put that out there as something that's really important. I think the quarantine measures that the state has recently revised and is implementing is going to be a step in the right direction and really help us out as we're doing the contact tracing and those investigations. It's going to help with the staff shortages. It's also going to help. I think what I would offer up is still the most important thing we can do to help around the quarantine needs within a school is still lower the transmission within our community. So I think the governor spoke very clearly in terms of what that could look like around Thanksgiving, but realistically, we all need to do our part in terms of reducing our activity with others that are not in our household. And to the degree that we can do that, we'll actually cut down these numbers and we'll actually see better supports. And the quarantine concerns will be at least reduced in our communities.
Governor Charles Ashby from the Grand Junction Daily Sentinel. So I can't ask the Hancock question again. I guess there's no point in that. But I will ask this, though. One of you guys mentioned about students wanting to go back to class because they want to get out of the house, and don't we all? And I know your focus is on in-person class, but I'm wondering about extracurricular activities such as sporting events and that sort of thing. Are you addressing that at all, or is it just about instruction?
There were several remarks on the working group about the importance of extracurricular activities to keeping students engaged. And so we fully appreciate the core academic mission of schools, but I think members of the task force also of the working group feel strongly about how we can safely do extracurricular activities, which are a way to keep students involved in the school experience, and also many of which have a direct nexus to the academic side as well. Rebecca or Heath, do you want to address that?
I would just echo what the governor said. We were thrilled to hear that task force working group members really do want to focus on that as well. We know that particularly for older students, a singularly academic focus, if you're a student who has struggled or hasn't felt attached to school in the past, may not prevent what we want to prevent, which is an increase in dropout and disengagement. So I think the working group will look at schools who've really struck the right balance between a combination of in-person learning academically with the other factors that keep students connected to school.
Hi there, Teeny Ricciardi with the Denver Post. Thanks so much for taking our questions. You mentioned that you have dozens of schools to learn from about what they did this semester. I'm curious, what were some of the biggest lessons that you guys learned this fall? What innovations or positive things do you hope processes stick around post-pandemic? And then also when it comes to predictability, How is the state going to empower districts and provide that level of clarity, predictability, and transparency about when in-person learning is appropriate versus remote learning versus hybrid? Thank you.
And by the way, this is the last question. I want to thank you, Teeny, as well. There are great examples of what has worked across the state. There's districts that have been back. I think some of the common themes are there's been a strong collaborative relationship with teachers and with paraprofessionals in those districts that have been more successful. That relationship of trust is critical. Involving county public health early in that discussion, and maybe Heath can talk about Eagle County, which I think has been a fairly successful experience. Amy can talk about some of the things that she's seen where districts have reached out and really worked closely with teachers. So, first of all, that's going to be mostly in the future. Today, there were a few anecdotes shared, but I think collectively as a group, there was a directive to kind of look at some of the things that work in Colorado and report back to the group in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I think one thing that I heard on the call today, and one thing I feel like I can talk to in terms of our experience here in Eagle County is having some of that risk reduction toolkit, that guidance that was available for schools, for teachers, for families in advance of starting in-person modality this year was really, really helpful. It helped create a level of expectation for everybody involved because realistically, it's a collaborative and a shared effort. And so I think that's the other lesson, at least I took away very clearly from today is where the effort and the vision is shared within a community, we see a lot of that success, right? So not only in terms of making sure this is a high priority for all of us in the community, and here's what we want to contribute to it to help protect that high priority in our community, but it's also making sure that you have enough resources that can respond to the needs as things do emerge. We're in a pandemic after all, so let's face it, there's going to be cases, there's going to be times that we have to do an investigation or we have to do contact tracing. But again, those communities that seem to share that resource and that responsibility seem to be responding very favorably right now.
Sure, and I'll just add that I think one of the things that we know has worked well is that that partnership with our local health departments when they are working hand in hand with the local school district and providing that input and guidance. So we hope that sticks around. I think our school leaders will share that they have never worked more closely with their local health departments, and that is a positive thing. So that is something that we would obviously want to continue going forward. And then I would also add, as the governor pointed out, I think we have seen in those places where there is true collaboration between the district, the educators, the parents, and the local health department, there's good communication. That is where we see things, going really well. And so we need to encourage and incentivize that type of collaboration and communication to happen as we go forward. So that's, again, a lesson learned, I think, in the places where sometimes that broke down or there wasn't clear or consistent communication is where we saw things not going well. So that's a lesson learned about moving forward to how to do that better.
Members. And I want Coloradans to know as we prepare to celebrate Thanksgiving safely and make the sacrifices that many of us are making and limiting our social interactions, wearing a mask in public and doing what we need to contain the virus. While that is all occurring, we have a very smart, talented, diverse group of people representing many stakeholders in education that are working hard, meeting several times a week in different subgroups to help increase the likelihood of uninterrupted return to in-person education across the state next semester. So we're working hard at this. We need, of course, the support of community members, parents, teachers, schools, districts, and others to really help make sure that we have the right resources in the right place, the right protocols in the right place at the right time to keep students and teachers safe and make sure that our kids' future is not yet another casualty of this awful pandemic. Thank you all for joining us. Have a safe and happy Thanksgiving.